Australia's super funds have assets of about $3.9 trillion. For an industry holding so much of our money, you'd expect the highest standards of corporate governance. Superannuation fund Cbus knew it had problems paying out beneficiaries on time, but it took distraught family members complaining and speaking out publicly to force the fund to respond.
Just all these people are going through grief and trauma and stress, and they're playing with people's lives. I can tell you that what I went through, the effect it's had on my kids and how it affects everybody is just unbelievable, and they just don't care.
Now, Cbus is being prosecuted by ASIC, and the flaws in the industry more widely are under scrutiny. Our business expert and investigative supremo, Adele Ferguson, joins me now. Adele, welcome back to 7:30.
Thank you.
How much did Cbus know about the problems paying out its beneficiaries before people like Carolyn Hocking spoke out?
They knew for about at least 6 or 7 months beforehand. There were a risk committee that had directors on that risk committee that were informed about it in November 2022. And it wasn't until August 2023 that they actually self-reported to the corporate regulator, which is a breach of the rules. They should have reported 30 days after they knew.
And when they did that self-reporting, did they tell the whole story about what was going on?
No, they didn't. They actually undercooked it. They told ASIC that everything was in control and there were no ongoing issues, and they were. Now, just explain what was going wrong, and particularly in relation to the payment, why the payments, in fact, were going so slowly. Yeah, so what happened was many of the super funds have outsourced the administration. So if someone dies or they need to claim on their insurance, because just about everybody pays insurance out when they have a super fund, they ring up, they go to the call centre and it gets processed. What was happening is this company that Cbus were using, Link, had so many issues for years. They had staff issues, it was a toxic culture, there were inefficiencies. In many cases, they were just using paperwork, so instead of sending emails, you had to send it by post. So there were so many delays, so people, thousands of people, up to 10,000 people, were not getting paid on time. So if a husband died and they'd contact Cbus through this call centre, in some cases, they'd have to wait 15 months to get a payment, which should have taken 30 or 40 days.
So when Cbus became aware that there were problems with the way those payments were being made, these long delays, should they not have brought that system back in-house?
Yeah, absolutely, because it was a systemic issue. It wasn't just a one-off. It had been going on for many, many years. They're then told in November 2022 there is a problem. By February 2023, there are more complaints. They're still not doing anything. And it's not until December that they go public. And then we now have ASIC that have taken action against them for all these reasons that they hadn't self-reported on time, they hadn't done enough.
And what did ASIC find about the extent of the problem? You said there were clearly thousands of cases that were delayed, but what else did ASIC find about the way Cbus was functioning? Yeah,
well, they were finding that they were actually not really telling the truth. They were pretending that it was not ongoing, and it was. And that's a really serious issue because these are people's lives here. You know, one woman was talking about how she had 2 young kids, and sometimes they had to go without because the husband had died and they were trying to get access to his super funds, which is shocking.
Now, Wayne Swan is the chairman of Cbus. He said a lot of the superannuation companies have problems with Link. Is it fair to push the responsibility onto Link?
Well, in a way it is. Link did have problems, but the industry funds and other super funds that are using them would have known. And at the end of the day, if you are on the board of a fund, you're responsible. You can't outsource accountability. So while it is true it was Link's problem, they knew about it for a long time and they should have done something. And that something should have been maybe bring it back in-house, but that would have cost too much money.
So we're obviously talking about an enormous industry in Australia. This suggests problems of corporate governance inside Cbus in the way it responded. Is this a one-off, or do these problems exist in other parts of the industry?
Well, there are problems with other parts of the industry. It's a massive industry. As you said, it's nearly $4 trillion. And when you look at industry funds, over the years there have been criticisms of them in terms of their board composition, for example. Generally, they'll have 50% will be employer members and 50% will be union reps. And that isn't in keeping with today's corporate governance, where you have a majority of independent directors. So that can then cause the wrong decisions to be made. It can, have conflicts of interest. And the other thing with the entire sector is it doesn't even have a code of conduct, which, if you look at the banking industry, general insurance industry, life insurance industry, they all have codes of conduct. Here is this massive industry. It doesn't even have a voluntary code, never mind a mandatory code.
Now, today, the CEO of Cbus, Christian Fock, made this apology. He was appearing before a Senate committee. Let's just listen to what he said.
Firstly, I do want to again say sorry for the impact that the delays in processing of insurance claims have had on our members and their families. We know that delays in processing claims can add to their distress at a difficult time. I want to reassure the committee that we remain focused on our members and their best financial interests. And like many institutions experiencing rapid growth, it has taken time for Cbus to mature and attract the right personnel to meet our needs.
Now, perhaps it's fair enough, but he's clearly reading that apology. Is it adequate? He's blaming rapid growth on their failure to recruit enough quality staff. Is it good enough?
I don't think it's good enough at all. It's a typical 101 type of apology. It's too little, too late.
So what happens next? Clearly, you're saying there are questions throughout the industry. We've had a Royal Commission. It clearly didn't look at superannuation. Where does this go from here?
Yeah, it didn't look at superannuation. They spent less than 2 weeks looking at super over a year. And so it was completely glossed over. So I think now there'll be a lot of scrutiny on this sector. You've got the Australian Financial Complaints Authority, which is where people go to make complaints. They have actually sent to the corporate regulator 16 systemic issues with the superannuation industry, which is really serious. 16, that's gone up a lot in the last 12 months. So you're going to have the regulators really looking at this sector, and you no doubt have a Senate inquiry. I think there'll be a lot going on.
I hope you'll be part of it wherever it goes from here. Adele Ferguson, thanks for bringing your expertise this evening.
Thank you.